The United States and China have wrapped up 2 days of high-level talks in Beijing, and it's far from enough to end their trade dispute. Tweeting before a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, the US Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin called the talks productive but didn't give details on the progress that was made. Negotiations are set to continue in Washington next week, with the Chinese president reaffirming his commitment to reach a mutually beneficial deal. The two economic giants have been locked in a tariff war for almost a year now and are trying to reach an agreement before March the 1st. If not, the US has said it will bump up tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. But what are the so-called grand bargains the US is looking for? Well, President Donald Trump's administration is pressing China to narrow a $320 billion trade deficit by purchasing more US goods. Last month, Beijing agreed to increase imports of US agricultural and energy products. Washington is also demanding Beijing accelerate efforts to open its markets in sectors such as financial services and manufacturing. So far, the Americans have made progress by getting China to lower tariffs on imported cars, as well as allowing foreign companies to own a larger share of their Chinese operations. And the US has recently ramped up calls for China to end forced technology transfers and increase protection for American intellectual property rights. But Beijing has repeatedly denied infringing on these rights. Well, one particular company that's been at the centre of the two countries' trade dispute is Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications giant. Trump has been leading a campaign against Huawei and what he calls state-sponsored spying. He is reportedly close to signing an executive order that'll ban Huawei from doing business in the US. This past week, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo cautioned European allies against using Huawei equipment, saying it could hurt their relationship with the US. Well, let's get more on this now with our Editor-at-large Craig Copetas, who's in Washington. Hi, Craig. So no breakthrough at the end of these latest talks, but a promise of more talks in Washington. Do you get the sense that the two sides are edging closer to a deal?
Haven't we been here before, Oscar? I have no indication the people we've been speaking to in Washington is getting any closer to a deal. Look, there are 100 key issues involved here that the U.S. has given to the Chinese, saying you got to deal with this stuff. And at this recent round of meetings in China, they could not even agree on a draft framework for the broad outlines of a deal. And you listed what the issues are, intellectual property rights. We're talking about national security, Chinese government subsidies to industries. It goes on and on and on. However, when they say, it's been a productive meeting, well, I guess that's better than a poke in the eye. But no one here I've spoken with has seen any productivity.
No, but over where you are, it seems that US President Donald Trump is more preoccupied with domestic issues. In fact, we're preparing for quite a significant announcement in the Rose Garden shortly. What are we expecting for him to say?
Yeah. Well, he's going to declare a national emergency. He's going to try and use funds from the Defense Department, from the military, to build this wall. There are going to be dozens of court challenges. There is going to be a major fight within the Congress. And people here, we talk about a trade war, Oscar. Let me tell you, they're gearing up here for a kind of war over this national emergency that's going to pale. It's going to make the trade war pale in comparison.
Donald Trump seems to think that by declaring a national emergency, it'll all but guarantee him a border wall. Is that the case? Can anyone stop him?
Well, Oscar, in the reality distortion field that Trump has created in the United States, answering your question really first requires we have a semantic and philosophical discussion on what actually constitutes a wall. And I think we'd be putting our viewers to sleep if we did that. But this is really what it is. The only thing he hasn't mentioned yet are Lego blocks, to build down there. It's that surreal, it's that confusing here, and there's going to be a big fight over the next few months here. You can bet on it. And going back to this trade war, Oscar, as I said, I think that the trade issue is just going to take a backseat. I'm hearing privately that Trump is going to give them an extension, keep the 10% tariff, and tell the American public, hey, it's a great victory for the United States. So the way this distortion field is working here now, a large percentage of the people in the United States are going to believe him.
Interesting times as always. Craig Copetas in Washington, thank you.